Kris Bradley, welcome to the show. It's so lovely to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So just to enlighten the audience, anyone who doesn't know who you are and all those fantastic things that you do, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So, my name is Kris Bradley. I run two companies. One is Boomfox Productions, where I have a music production company providing services for anything from licensing music to film and TV placements and serving artists and independent artists in the community. And then I also have an educational side to what I do, which is Produce Like a Boss, where I'm teaching singer-songwriters how to produce their own music so that they can become self-sufficient musicians. I started Produce Like a Boss a couple years ago because I come from the background of being a singer songwriter, and learning how to produce was extremely challenging for me because I'm just not tech savvy or even tech minded. Like I don't think like an engineer, I think like a songwriter. And so I feel like it took me much longer to learn than it needed to, because I kept every time I would seek out, whether it was a tutorial video or a mentor, I just found that people were talking to me like I had an engineer brain and it sounded like technobabble. So, I powered through anyways, just because I was super passionate about learning how to do it, both so that I could save money on my own recording costs. But also as I started doing demos, I noticed that there was, it opened up a whole world of business for me as well. So I stuck with it and kind of pushed through this threshold, right? And then all of a sudden I was helping other artists that were coming to my studio that I was producing. And I was like, oh, you should do this. And I would teach them a few things. And they said, oh man, you're really good at explaining this. Like you should put this on like a YouTube channel or something. Then, one thing led to another, and a publisher friend of mine was like, you should read the book Launch and learn about how the online course creation world goes and all of that, and a little bit of marketing. And that was it. I mean, I read that book and that changed my life. And then I said, okay, I went from, I'll create a YouTube channel around this to, why don't we make an online course, you know?
Did,
And
did you do his course as well? Because
I
the book,
didn't do Jeff Walker's course,
yeah,
but I did use like his method with the PLC method
yeah,
to do my first launch. And I also attracted a really amazing mentor who works really closely with Jeff Walker and was also in his mastermind program. So
nice.
it was very kismet. You know how when I feel like when you're doing something that's in alignment with your purpose, how just like boulders just move out of the way. It's like the path of least resistance is like, first of all, what lights you up, but also what doesn't have resistance, what there's nothing in the way. And it was like the second I made that decision, it was like a mentor came into my life, and then all the books started falling off the shelves. And then I fell in love with marketing because I had something I was so proud of that I knew could help people. I actually always felt pretty icky about marketing myself.
Hmm.
Um, up until that moment. But once Produce Like a Boss came in and I saw how it was helping people, I just became really passionate about that as well, So to kind of sum up that story, as I made this course and I thought maybe just a few people, including the artists in Nashville that I was helping, maybe some friends from home. I had no idea what would happen. But once again, things just started lining up. And, all of a sudden, I wasn't just attracting people that wanted to get the course, but I was attracting partners, which I later came to realize was affiliate partners, people that had larger lists than I did and larger reach, that trusted what I was doing because of the relationships I had already established in the industry as a producer and songwriter. So getting those relationships kind of happened quicker maybe than normal for some people, I think.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I mean, I went from like my first very baby launch with 35 new students to the next launch, having over 100 students, to the next launch having over 200 students. And now we've passed we passed 1,000 students a couple months ago. So I'd say we're probably close to around 1,500 or 1,600 students at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I have to say, there's an awful lot I want to unpack in what you just said.
I'm like, every little thing, I'm like, I could, no, don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't.
Oh no, tell me about it. It's especially when you start talking about those things that you're really passionate about. And I can tell you're passionate about marketing as much as you are music. Uh, One of the things I want to say to the audience is one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on the show. Well, it's kind of a twofold reason. Firstly, the stuff you produce, the branding, the messaging is so fantastic. Go check out Kris on Instagram. Your stuff on there is just brilliant. It's so
Thank
on
you.
point. And also, the messages that you're saying are so in line with what I'm often saying, which is, you don't have to have a record label. You don't have to have a big agent. you can earn a decent living from licensing your tracks.
Mhm.
Whether that is, in my case, getting them licensed on film trailers, or in your case, you're licensing beats, or you're licensing it to TV shows. There are so many avenues for our music. And, I find it very inspiring. So I want to go back to the start when you said your roots were from a singer-songwriter. So give us a little bit more about your background, uh,
Yeah,
where you
sure.
came from.
Sure. So, oh gosh, I've been playing music. I mean, I was kind of born into music in that we spent the first 8 years of our life with my great grandmother, right? My mom had me very young. She got pregnant at 15, had me at 16 in
Wow.
the 80s, right? So I had this kind of smorgasbord of music that I was influenced by. I grew up with a piano in the house. Grandma had me doing everything from Judy Garland to Glenn Miller and stuff like that. So I grew up on big band, jazz, swing, and the standards, right? Playing like jazz standards literally, and then Mozart and Bach and the classical pieces. And then I had my mom, who was a teenager in the 80s, giving me stuff like, I was listening to like Guns N' Roses, to like Heart and Metallica, and Led Zeppelin was like a big one as well. So just always been into music. I was born into it. But I kind of became an in the closet musician. It's like I was doing it in the house, and then I don't know, I got super shy around it. When I was around like 12 or 13, I was still playing. I had moved on to the guitar from the piano, but I couldn't play in front of anybody that wasn't the family, right? And I would only play because I was kind of raised like we do what the greats did. There were no songwriters in the family, right? So with my grandmother, was always teach like learn what Glenn Miller did, learn what Bach did. And even if I started to play something on the piano, she go, "What is that?" And I go, "Oh, I'm making that up." She go, "No, no, no, we don't do that in here." So bless her heart. I love you, great Grams. I love her, but I think I grew up with this mentality of like I can only replicate. I can't kind of innovate and do my own thing. So songwriting was a huge, and the thing that sucked about that, Richard, is that I think inside my heart, I think that's where I got the stage fright. Is like I knew I had something to say and I wanted to be a songwriter, but it had become this Everest that was so unachievable. And don't you dare try and do that. Don't you dare try and recreate the wheel. That it gave me a complex, to be quite honest with you,
Yeah.
that just caused me to kind of hide and not do anything until like I'd say my early 20s, late teens. I was like, no, I got to get out there. I got to perform. Still way too freaking scared to do it with original music though. So I got into cover bands. Right. So I did, of course, a Heart cover band. I did a Zeppelin cover band. I did a blues cover band. And I was really playing in that world of like what I grew up on. I didn't even look to see what was modern so much. Um, and I'll just kind of fast forward. So then I continued doing that for years. And then even around like 24, 25, I joined an all girl Led Zeppelin tribute band called Les Zeppelin that toured. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
And just to go onto the woo for just a second, I was learning about creative visualization and the law of attraction. And this was kind of like
Yes.
my early 20s is when I got introduced to that. And I remember saying to myself, like, okay, I wonder if this stuff really works. Well, if it does, here's what I want, universe. And I said, I want to go on tour. And I said, but I don't have original music because I'm too afraid to write it or share it if I do write it. But I want to tour the world. So make it happen, universe. And I kid you not. I get like an email like the next week that's like, hey, you're that Zeppelin girl, right? That's always like singing Zeppelin and cover bands. We have this really amazing project in New York. If you could fly out and audition, you'd be traveling and doing like a 40 plus United States tour. You'd actually start by going to India, right? So that was like,
What?
it blew my mind. And of course I took it. I flew to New York. I auditioned. I got the part. Um, Went to New York. We went to India and did a charity like benefit concert in Mumbai. And then we got on this tour bus. Will Smith had the tour bus before us. Like that's how we had a writer. It was like a full blown tour. They had a major fan base. So everything was built in. It didn't matter that I wasn't an artist with a following yet. I was able to jump in as the lead singer for this already established act.
That's so cool.
Got back from tour after about 4 or 5 months. They were like, okay, let's continue to do this. Do you want to move to New York and become like a full member of the band? And I was like, I knew in that moment, I said, if I do that, I'm committing to being a cover artist forever. So I decided not to. And then I did decide to take an Asia tour shortly after because I still hadn't really gotten it out of my system. And I went and I did a top 40 band for the next year in Malaysia and then in Bangkok. So all the while I'm building up all these muscles to like, I'm learning great songs.
Yeah.
I'm performing, but I wasn't really writing as much. And then something really amazing happened. I got back from Asia and I was so lost. And I was like, what am I really trying to do here? Like, what do I want to do? And I was like, well, I want to write original music. Okay. Once again, how do I make that happen? Because it's not natural to me. I wasn't like, Bob Dylan talented where I was just like born writing great songs, right? then the book started to fall off the shelves again. And I started getting turned on to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I started
Such
getting
a great book.
so good.
Yeah.
Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison. And then even like, some more spiritual and personal development stuff, like Do the Work even by Stephen Pressfield. And all of a sudden I realized, like, what am I freaking waiting for? You're not good because you haven't tried. And no one ever told me it was a skill I could learn. It was kind of like, we don't do that. You can't do that. And I thought, well, if I don't do it naturally, then it's not meant for me. That's not true. So I really dug into the craft around at that time and just started reading and studying and writing and had to break through massive anxiety around sharing my work. I mean, this is all before I started pitching it and tried to monetize it. I just had to get through that mental hurdle of I'm even worthy to do this, which is so ironic that it is literally my profession and that I get commissioned to write over 30 songs a month. That blows my mind. But this is my backstory that I frankly haven't actually shared this kind of detail with most people. So so then I started studying, then I got good. And then I started pitching my music. People were like, my mentors were telling me, like, you're really good. Do you want to do this professionally? I said, yes, I do. I'd love to get these songs cut with other artists. Cause at that point I realized something about myself as a writer, which was that I was very, very still multi-genre because that's how I grew up. I think I wanted to write in different styles. So, I started pitching my songs, and then I got led to Nashville where, it's like, hey, if you want to do this professionally, whether you're country or not, like Nashville is just the place to be. There's community, there's publishers, it's like you meet people. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I got to write at 10. I got to write at 2. I got to, it's very common that, there's a mastermind there of everyone doing the same thing. So I moved to Nashville and I realized as I was making these songs, or that I was writing these songs that like I had to have them professionally demoed. And at this point, all I really had was I had GarageBand and Logic, and I was able to do very rough demos, but nothing pitchable. I could barely move around in the program. So I was hiring other people. And then that started to add up, especially when you move to Nashville and you're writing 3 songs a day. So as my volume increased, I realized, oh man, like I either need to learn how to do this or I need endless funds, which I did not have. And so I kind of learned how to produce out of necessity, if that makes sense.
Wait.
Oh,
perfect
sorry.
sense.
Yeah. And then, as I started to get better at that, other songwriters started going, oh, you do demos? And then even I was meeting publishers. Oh, you did this demo? Could you do some demos for my other songwriters? And it kind of became this side hustle where I was recording for people. And then I started picking up session work as a vocalist and all these things. It's like, oh, that's my side business. That's my side business. But I'm really here to be a professional writer. What I really want is the publishing deal or the number 1 song. And then what's funny about that is I had friends that had publishing deals and that got number 1s. And all of a sudden they're coming to me going, wait, how do I do what you're doing? Cause like, aren't you making money making music? And I was like, well, yeah, but you're doing the thing, but wait a second, and it kind of struck me that, and that's how Boomfox Productions was born. It was like, am I doing this as a side hustle or do I actually have a business? Because at a certain point it was making me way more money than writing for free and pitching to publishers and artists. Right.
Yeah. Before we dive into the birth of Boomfox, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, which is that tremendous anxiety around your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just a case of time healing that one? Is it still something you have and you've learned to deal with, or is there specific tools you use? Because obviously you've mentioned some amazing books, even The Artist's Way, her morning pages in that book for anxiety, fantastic. That free journaling. Was there anything you picked up that helped you deal with that? Or was it just a case of people were exchanging money for your services, which gave you that realization that there was some self-worth there?
I think it was a combination of tools, including meditation and the materials that I've been reading, because I think I named some books that, related more to what I did as an artist and a writer, but I was also getting into like Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson and Course in Miracles. And
mate, if we can high five right now.
Virtual high five.
Yeah.
And so it's really been like an overall, like it's been such a journey and I'm still on it of self-discovery and development. And I mean, it's never ending. And to be honest, like the anxiety has not gone away completely in general. Like I have generalized anxiety disorder, if we want to put a label on it. So I still kind of have to battle with that, but it's interesting because as it pertains to songwriting, I don't feel it anymore. as much, simply because of the repetition of doing it over and over again and forcing myself through those uncomfortable situations of the first co-writes you do. And, but there was also, I'm sure, it's like Tony Robbins says, like, there's no such thing as confidence, right? The confidence comes from experience, right? So trying to have that before you have the experience is a moot point. So I think the confidence came from, first of all, just doing it over and over again, but also the validation of, having other people go like, wow, you really contributed to this, right? Thank you. It's like I think getting that feedback is important. And then, of course, being able to monetize it was helpful as well. I remember the first guy who found me on one of the online marketplaces, I was just on there trying to do demo vocals. And he reached out and he said, hey, I love your vocals. Can I hire you to write a song and sing it? And I was like, wait, you want to pay me? And it was like 3 times what my rate was as a demo singer, because he was going to pay me. And it was also, I didn't even know at the time, but that wasn't assuming I would give up copyright. It wasn't like a work for hire. It was like, I'll pay you to collaborate with me. But when you're in Nashville, you get stuck in this, like, well, this is the way it is. And everyone just writes for free. And like all of a sudden the internet like it broke my brain. I was like, you're going to pay me. So that helped too.
What marketplace was that?
That's Sound Better, which you hear me talk a lot about, probably like on the online platforms. I'm always waving their flag because it was such a game changer. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. But the thing is, as I mentioned earlier, like, it's so important for musicians to know all of these possible avenues. Because as you said, we all kind of go into this basically newborns, don't we? With this burning desire that we must be doing something. But our education kind of says to us, no, firstly, you won't succeed because no one does. And secondly, the only way you can earn money as a musician is going to the record labels and pitching your demos, this type of stuff. When you've got things like Sound Better, where you can put yourself out there and be paid to do your work remotely. I mean, that's amazing, right? And then, it's just lovely. I really like that.
Yeah.
So,
and what's funny about that? This just reminded me. I remember in Nashville, as I was starting to enter into these online marketplaces and starting to monetize it, I started talking to a potential manager, which I thought at the time was like a dream come true. And he was finally giving me the attention I wanted. And I was like, great, this guy's going to help me. And when I told him about what I was doing on Sound Better, it was not even like, he was an old school guy. He couldn't even fathom like how big the internet and this kind of connection was. So he was like, no. Well, we're going to get you singing in the local studios. And like, oh man, I'll get you making $80 a song or $100 a song. I'm like, I'm making $200 to $300 a song, so helped me kind of dodge a bullet on that one. But it just goes to show a lot of traditional industry people still don't know that where it's moving, the new music industry.
Yeah. I can't remember the name. There was a lecturer I used to see do lecturers. He had an amazing blog, but he always used to kind of correct anyone who said music industry. He'd say music industries.
Yeah.
There are many industries within the music industry, and you go, I
love that.
Whoa, there is. He's right.
Yeah, totally.
And also, just going back as well, that list of books you listed, anyone listening, go back to that bit in the podcast and write those down, because those authors are fantastic and those books are immense. And anyone who kind of looking to broaden their mindset, especially when like I said, when we're going woo-woo on this one, we're going to the law of attraction, especially the Abraham Hicks books, they're for some they might be a bit much, but oh mate, love that stuff. So that's a full-on library list there. So you got to this point where you're starting to earn money through Sound Better. Was that at the same time that you started launching your production company, or?
So yeah, that kind of happened together, because as I was getting more clients, and now mind you, I had clients as well that weren't the online marketplaces, that were referral based, that were coming straight from Nashville, and some from LA, and just people I had met in the industry. So I kind of had these two different worlds. And I realized as I was doing it that, if this is working this successfully like this, I wonder what that would look like if I put it under the umbrella of a company and stopped calling it Kris Bradley, or I even at first called it Kris Bradley Productions. And I went, could this be keeping me from an opportunity because of the way I'm presenting myself as a one-man band,
Yeah.
And not to mention, I was getting better at creating systems and delegating and, project management, which meant I was letting go of the reins on things. I'm not going to mix everything I do. I'm not going to tune all my vocals. If I've got 10 jobs in the pipeline, the outsourcing makes sense. And all of a sudden, this name actually came from an ex-boyfriend, but Boomfox was kind of this DJ name we were playing with as I was doing some DJing. And I was like, I love that Boomfox production. It's kind of like a boombox, but it's foxy. I just liked the way that it sounded. Thank you, ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then we broke up, but I kept the name. And I was like, yeah, this just feels better. And then I was able to do Boomfox beats, and everything else I did just kind of became. It's even my LLC is Boomfox Productions, and I put
Yeah.
that as an umbrella over everything else I do.
Fantastic. I
Uh,
also, it's so nice and refreshing to hear another person who's achieved so much saying, you know what, I let go of mixing.
yeah.
So many of us have this thing that we need to be the composer, the arranger, the producer, the mixing engineer, and the mastering engineer. Come on, guys. Like,
That
let
brings me to one of my favorite sayings, which is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And
yes.
right. And it's like, I think, it's not anyone's fault that they feel that way. I think a lot of producers get sucked into producing and seeking the opinions and validation of other producers.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of the worst things we can do, because producers aren't our clients. Our clients are our clients, and they're also fans. And they're not going like, ooh, that's a sweet vintage compressor you used on that. I love the attack on that snare. I mean, like, that's what we crave, though. I mean, I had the same thing. I went to music school in my early 20s. I went to MI, and we all got in that kind of habit where we nerded out, and everything was like, ooh, I need to impress these other musicians around me. And I'm like, I got to let that go. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we trying to do here? I'm trying to run a business. I need to make like really great decisions. Number one. Number two, I think like the meaning of a producer has gotten lost through the fact that, I mean, I think it's great that we can do all these things because of technology, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I don't even own hardware gear. You know what I mean? I think that's amazing. But by the same token, it's like a producer's real job, if you pull back, it's like, it's really to be a visionary, right? Rick Rubin never touched a board. He doesn't play an instrument. That doesn't lessen what kind of producer he is. And, obviously we're not in the same boat because we are doing so many things, right?
Hmm.
But I think if we can pull back and go, our job, it's like, I always just kind of simplify it. As the producer, your job is to be the visionary and to deliver the final product to the client or to the market. How you get there is not what determines how good of a producer you are. The only rule is, does it sound good? And if you
Yes.
facilitated that entire experience, whether you played one or mixed it is irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, mate.
that's my rant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. There's so many sort of systems that people have in place in their workflow where they kind of go, well, I have to do it like this because this is how you get the proper sound. Well, I need to use this chain of effects in this way, and it's going to take me X amount of time. And people resist shortcuts, uh,
Mhm.
even if they give you the same result, even if the result is slightly lesser in quality,
Mhm.
but the time saved sometimes is so much more valuable. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
100%. It's kind of like, I remember like this argument that I'd get into with producers in Nashville when we'd go to put we'd be building a vocal chain. And at the time, I was just using the CLA vocal plugin because it was easy and it
And it's
made
awesome.
and it's awesome. But I was getting a lot of shame around it from other producers. These are the
Yes.
same guys that would tell me, you're not a real producer because you don't have a real studio. But I was making more money than them from my laptop. It was
Yeah.
interesting, but
Yeah.
I was in a small minded place where I was listening and I'm like, okay. And they're like, that CLA plugin, because you don't know exactly what it's doing because it's so simple, it's not okay. We need to do this 10 plugin chain. And then I would listen to it and we'd A/B it and I go, but I like the way this
Yeah.
sounds. And even if, like you said, it was compromised by 20%, the fact that I got to do that with the click of a button with one
Yeah.
preset made it worth it for me, especially what my needs are,
Yeah.
so.
Plus those, I use the CLA bass all the
Oh
time.
yeah. I love all the
It's,
CLA
oh
stuff.
mate, they're so good because it's the same thing. It's like, okay, yes, they've renamed what you would call compression to be smush or something like that. They've renamed the stuff. So yeah, okay, we don't necessarily know exactly what's going in, but what's the point? They're toys for us to play with to get a result we want. Surely
And
that's,
and I think when an award-winning mix engineer creates something and puts their name on it, like maybe they know what they're doing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
It's
had
like,
a,
I
yeah,
think taking advantage of templates and presets is completely underrated.
yeah, yes, I I absolutely agree. You know, so many of the things I use are straight out of the box. I just go click, yes, done.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to spend hours fiddling with this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So before we dive too deep in there, I want to go. We're going into Boomfox. Okay. So you got the name. Uh, what was the next step? You set it up as an LLC.
No, not right away, actually. So I did talk to my CPA in Nashville, and I said,
What's a CPA?
my accountant.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Thanks.
it's
Yeah.
the tax. Oh God, what does it even stand for? My CPA. It sounds. It's my tax professional.
Okay.
And that they do my taxes. And he goes, everything, all the benefits that you can get is including like expenses, like everything you need to do. You could do that as a sole proprietor, and like don't basically just kept telling me don't worry about it. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, when should I? He goes, look, when you're making like 80,000 to 6 figures a year, then we'll talk about it. And so I hadn't got there yet when I went to him about it the first couple of times. And then, I finally did go to him and I was like, hey, which wasn't actually that short, after. I think it was about 6 months to a year afterwards. And I'm like, okay, we're there now. And then that's when we decided to do the LLC.
That's pretty
Now that
amazing.
thanks. Now that we've expanded to include produce like a boss, which has become it's weird to even think that that falls under another umbrella because it's become its own kind of thing. But I do have produce like a boss under Boomfox. Now we're an S Corp. But we didn't do, I mean, that makes more sense now because of the amount of contractors I have and employees, and just makes more sense now.
Okay. Okay. So I'm very, very keen to ask how you got into producing beats. Because I know you kind of in your feed and you've got courses on it as well. You talk about that being a viable outlet for home producers.
Yeah. Producing beats, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, I was doing demos for a long time, and a lot of the times the demos were either country or pop, and this kind of required a lot, from just building the tracks to the automations and things that go into building a full track. And then I'm trying to think. I mean, first of all, I love hip hop and I love pop, and so I mean that part was natural. But like, what kind of began it, I think, was learning about BeatStars. Maybe I had stumbled onto a podcast or something where I heard about beat leases and I went, oh, wait a second. And then I started doing some digging and I realized that first of all, like it's just like a smoother process. Like I can make a beat, and I was at a certain point, I started to call it beats for breakfast. I can make a beat every day before lunch. Just by sitting down and kind of putting a timer on, and a lot of times they're the same 2 chords, same 3 chords, and then if you think about like how the progression builds, I mean, it's just really becomes like it's just really a streamlined way to build a track with minimal effort, if you will. Not that some beats don't take more time, but I think we can both agree it's a lot easier to make a beat than to make a trailer track or a country pop song.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think what drew me to it was understanding that there was a business around it, in beat licensing, and that although the license prices were lower, this was kind of my first introduction to having automated recurring revenue, like money there. I was like, I don't have to trade my time for this. That's another thing. It's like I can lease a beat to somebody over and over, to people over and over again, but I only make it once and I'm going to continue to make money on it for the next several years, right? Or however long it's relevant. And that was really appealing to me. Yeah.
Okay, so just to clarify for those in the audience who aren't sure, when you say make a beat, you don't just mean grab a drum machine and drop a beat, do you?
Like pulling in a loop or something, or a drum
Uh,
machine.
as in, like, it's not you're not just making like an 8-bar drum beat, are you?
Oh, no, no, no. These are fully fleshed arrangements, and there are several sections and multiple, layers. I try to keep beats that I'm pitching to artists pretty minimal. That's another reason I find it to be a little bit easier, because you're leaving room for a vocalist and an artist to do whatever they want,
Yeah,
firstly. Second of all, a lot of times artists are going to get the stems and they're going to take the stems to their producer, because a lot of times when you're the beat maker, you're not actually the producer. Like the producer's buying those stems because they like the hooks in the stuff that you've come up with. So, and then they'll make it kind of, the producer makes it a song with the artist. So no, it's not just putting in a drum machine. I mean, there's bass lines, there's synths, there's keys, there's pads, there's haze, there's ear candy and all that stuff. But like I said, I keep it minimal on the ear candy to leave room for the vocal.
yeah, yeah. So you're essentially supplying a stemmed backing track, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just
And
what?
there was
Just
some
what?
cool things I discovered as well, like, that you could lease beats with hooks on them and charge a little bit more and just build. The thing is, as a beat maker, you're leasing your beat, you're already half of the copyright owner. So why not increase the value of your beat by including a hook that's sung, either by you or somebody that you have sing it? You already own half the copyright. And now you've just made yourself stick out kind of in a niche as opposed to all the other beats that everyone else is doing kind of
Yeah,
blend into each other. Yeah.
that's awesome. So
Yeah.
how long?
And beat making was never like my primary. It was always one of my like, oh, this is another thing I can do, and you can do anything from, Beat Stars and like Airbit to even Sound Better opened up to start placing instrumentals as well. So I would also make like pop tracks and all sorts of tracks and then lease them through Sound Better at a higher price point
And when you say place to clients or place as
with
in
clients.
sing. Okay, cool.
With
Rather
clients,
than
yeah.
license on TV. Right. So do you mind sharing what type of money were you looking at when it comes to licensing the beats? Because there's
Yeah.
lots of people who do that, but I'm always intrigued about it. So
Yeah, sure. So I mean, $49.99 tends to be the sweet spot on the beats that I'm licensing on BeatStars. And I will say something about beats that like I said, it is one of my streams of income. It's not my main focus. And I
mhm.
noticed that it was busier and I was having more success when I was showing up for it every day. So the way to really nail that is to release several times a week at the same time. Just like with any content marketing strategy, you do the same thing on their platform, you're rewarded for it. The algorithm sees it, more people see it, you get more beat leases. You market it and you create and have a regular release schedule, and that's what keeps it coming in. So I have students now that I've taught this process to that are smoking me, and I also have other producers that are producing beats for me for my production company now, and I'm representing them and splitting license fees with them because I just don't have the time like I used to. But yeah, $49.99 tend to be, or 95 tend to be the sweet spot on BeatStars. And then for Sound Better, I've actually really lucked out on all the beats that I've licensed on Sound Better have been over 1,500. So that's,
Nice.
yeah, that's, and I think that's pretty high for like just leasing a track to an artist to use.
Yeah.
That's on the higher end. So that's been
Yeah.
cool. There was this
Always do.
one time I had a single that I took a beat, I made it, and then I just layered some guitars and made it a little bit cooler. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to release this a week before I was going to release. And I had the beat up on Sound Better, but I had pulled it down and done my own thing as an artist. I get an email from Sound Better. They're like, hey, this guy wants to lease your beat for like $2,000. And they said, how do you feel about that? And I said, well, I'm about to release this as an artist in like 5 days. So it was, you tell him like, I'll make it exclusive to him after this release, but he needs to know that I'm releasing it. And they said, yeah, sure, it's fine. So it's like, I technically got paid to produce my own single because I got paid for the stems as soon as I released it.
Amazing. See,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So if the beat making wasn't your primary thing, was it producing tracks for other artists? Was that the primary thing, or was this producing your own stuff?
Yeah. So Beats was a side hustle. Producing tracks for other artists and producing demos for the artists was a side hustle. Um, I would say that the front hustle for was mainly doing session work as both a producer and a session vocalist, right?
Hmm.
And although I charged more for productions than I did for vocals, I made more per hour as a vocalist, and
Yeah.
that's what I talk to my students about a lot. It's like, you might look at, oh, I'm going to make $1,000 on this or $2,000 on this, but like, how much time does it take you to make a track?
Yeah.
Because if I'm making $250 to do vocals and that takes me less than an hour, that's pretty sweet, right? As opposed to
Yeah.
like, this, production might pay $1,000 or, which is what I was charging at the time. But it's going to take me, maybe 10 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
So I would say that, vocal session work was kind of like the top front hustle. Right under that was custom songwriting and production, where people would find me and like, oh, for our brand or for this product, can you custom write a song for this event or, whatnot. And that's nice because that's B2B, right? That's a
Yeah.
business going, hey, we need this for this particular thing. And they're usually willing to pay a little bit more. So that was definitely the front. Another side hustle was, I was making money making music, and I still do for film and TV, but that game, that's kind of a long game, right? And there wasn't as much upfront money in that. It was definitely more like, okay, well, we got it placed or we got it picked up by the major library, and now we're going to wait and see what that looks like and, collect the royalties,
Yeah.
after 9 months or a year. So,
I was just about to ask you about your TV placements.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm actually seeing a lot of the seeds from that sprouting still like within the last year, where it's like, oh, that's stuff I worked on years ago, you know?
Yeah.
I
Was
was, it,
that
I,
was
go
that
ahead.
standard library stuff?
Most of the stuff. So I have one relationship that was blossomed into a beautiful friendship that actually began on Sound Better, where someone hired me to do vocal production on something. And then we just started chatting and I was like, yeah, I produce too. And oh, I do film and TV stuff for Warner Chappell. Boom. Like relationship began, 30 songs went in, got picked up. And then that kind of like catapulted that. Up until that point, I had done some stuff where I got, like a placement here, placement there on various TV shows, but through like a lot of grit and a lot of pitching, a lot of
Hmm.
no's, a lot of composing to briefs, and then being told, no, we're not going to go with that, even though you put in all the work. I did land a few random placements and I did get a Lincoln commercial as well. And then we started to get other library placements as well. But I would say that what kind of came in and did woof and kind of did this catapult was definitely the Warner Chappell PM relationship for
Yes.
sure.
So PMs, for those of you in the audience who don't know, that's production music, which is library music, which is also given the name of the composer's pension, which kind of ties in with what you're saying about those seeds that
Yeah.
gradually start to germinate. If, again, like the beats, if you consistently put music out there into these libraries, your catalog just grows and you just stay in the forefront of everyone's mind.
100%. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we could ever make as an artist is waiting for like and it's unfortunate because you hear it a lot. Oh, like one song can change your life, like one song. So I think people get in the mindset of thinking like I'm gonna get a placement and it's gonna pay me $100,000 up front, and like not that those things don't exist, but that's also like saying I'm gonna win the lottery.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like effort and like resistance, and like, oh, I'm gonna like and treating our songs like they're our babies, when in fact it doesn't just come from quantity, or I'm sorry, quality. It also comes from quantity, right? And it is
Hmm.
really, I think the most successful people that I know, musicians and not, are, entrepreneurs they have multiple streams of income. They're coming from all different places. So instead of going one song, which, could change your life, but here's the thing, the one song that does change your life likely came after a bunch of other songs. It is very unlikely that the first song you ever write is going to be a smash hit or
Yeah.
generate even income at all, right? So getting into I got to keep planting seeds and not actually watch and wait for them to grow, but turn around and move forward and just trust that the rain will help those seeds grow.
Nice
Like,
analogy.
let it go. Let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the thing is, like, I've had some of those big payoffs, which at the time is like champagne.
Yeah.
You know, oh, this is amazing, and then you go, oh, okay, now what?
Yeah.
I'm just going to carry on doing the thing I want to do anyway. So, it's
Totally.
it's one of those things that, like you say, yes, they can be life changing, but at the same token, like, you need to kind of make sure that the life you're living when you are trying to achieve those goals is the life you want,
Yeah.
because the money
Well,
is going to bring some things, but
if you imagine if you only played the lottery and said, I'm not going to work
yeah.
another job in the meanwhile. I mean, and I think that's what I mean by it's not that the big payoffs don't exist, but it's like
Hmm.
there's too many people not doing anything else besides going for the big payoff.
Yeah.
And then there's this, we were talking, me and a publisher friend the other day about like, there's the songwriters that are like, oh, I just want to get that number one. And they write for years for free, right? Making nothing. And then maybe they get that number one. Okay, 500 grand comes in. Great. You worked for free for 10 years. How much is that now? Right. So it's also putting things in context and understanding how much work actually goes into this
Yeah.
in order to turn this into a profession. Right.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's that kind of like 10-year overnight success, isn't
Right. Right.
it?
100%.
Okay, right. So you've got your beat licensing, you're doing your session work. At what point did your educational program produce like a boss? When did you bring in your YouTube and your education? When did that come? When did that come?
So that came about 2 years ago. We're almost in November. So we're about to have our 2-year birthday in November
Yay.
of this year. Um, Yeah. And like I said, I didn't have any idea that this would become a full blown brand. I thought I was going to make a product and like I was going to make this course and I was going to share it with some friends and like maybe I had no idea. But as it turned out, it was, I, they say if you look at your first product and you don't cringe, then you launched too late. It's like I look back and I'm not cringing. I'm just like, wow, I really didn't know what I was doing in a lot of stuff. I knew what I was teaching and I knew how to teach, but I even look at like, just some of the branding and the social media when I first started. I was like, how did this attract people? But I think the message and the teaching, the content was there,
Yeah.
but I didn't know anything about running a brand, and then it just kind of, as I saw the amount of people that it was helping, and I just kind of saw people were going, what else you got? We need this, we need this. I went, okay, I can do that. I can help with that. And then other products became born. I can't English today, Richard. I'm sorry. Other products were born. Like I did a top lining course to help people learn how to write to those, tracks I was getting from DJs, how to do that, turn that into a business. And then beat making for songwriters was born. Kind of the same thing, teaching people how to get into beat licensing and also how to make the beats. And then even my latest one is called Home Studio Boss, where I'm teaching people now that have learned how to produce, how to do it at a professional level, just teaching them more advanced stuff, but also like how to run a business, like what's going on behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love everything you're doing. And also, P.S., you mentioned about branding. Like your branding is so good.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
If you look back 2 years ago, sometimes I get those 2-year memories and I go, oh. But I think
reaching
it's
for my phone right now.
I think it's important to just like, I don't know. I'm a big, because I procrastinated for so long. Think about how many years before I was ready to start writing my own music,
Yeah.
And then I didn't release my first record until I was after 30 because everything was just like, wait. So now I've completely flipped the switch. I am ready, fire, aim. So it was like the second I wanted produce, I went, oh, we'll call it Produce Like a Boss. It was like, okay, just start taking action and pivot as you go, because that's easier than getting started from a dead stop, right? And I knew the branding wasn't perfect, but I was like, it's okay. I know the yellow, the colors are going to be pink and yellow. I know we're going to do some headphones. Produce Like a Boss. Even somebody already owned that domain. I had to bid on it. I ended up paying $1,000 just to get the domain. And I was like, I'm just action. And then turn around and it's like, okay, let's clean that up.
I like to work by the adage that done is better than perfect.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you just don't get things out the door. And the same with music, especially with music. If you keep
100%.
tweaking away on making everything's air quotes perfect, you're just going to have,
It's like Leonardo da Vinci that said, great art is never finished. It's only abandoned.
That's awesome. Nice.
Right.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's go on some. I've got a couple of quick fire questions, really. Not
Sure.
many, just a couple.
Okay.
Because although I love just the open chats, I also like having a couple of questions up the sleeve. So, to date, what is your proudest moment of your career?
The proudest moment of my career, honestly, to date, it is my student success. It is what we've been able to do in the community to help people not only like realize their potential, but to actually start seeing results from it. We're taking people that thought I could never do this, and now they're producing their own stuff. We're taking people that were producing that was like, I don't know how to make money with this, and now they're making money doing this. Like that is my proudest achievement, is helping others live their dreams.
Are there any specific standout students in your mind?
Yes, I don't want to play favorites or anything.
Okay, no.
I definitely like. I mean, I have. I love all my students, but I definitely have my rock stars that are just. It's because the common thread among all of them is they're action takers. Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire. Nice. We can't talk about this last one, so I'll skip that question. Now, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling in their creative journey?
With which part of it?
Yes. Taking it from a simple hobby that they want to do into a paying business that they can then do full time, or however many hours a day they want to spend on it.
Sure. So the advice that I would give to anybody struggling from going to amateur to pro would be first to think about yourself as a lot of musicians don't realize that they're entrepreneurs. They're like the only business that don't realize they're in business, right? So there needs to be a massive amount of awareness that you come into, that you go, wow, when I want to get paid for what I do, that is completely different than doing something I love out of pure passion. And if I want to get paid for what I do, I have to provide value and I have to provide a service, right? And so I would just become super hyper aware of that, and then flip my thinking into, instead of what can I get, what can I give? Because if I can just tell a brief story really quick, like, when I was a singer-songwriter, just pitching my music, like, yeah, I was like super driven and had this fire, and like people really liked working with me. They liked my music, but it's like I wasn't breaking through a certain boundary because I didn't have enough skills to bring to the table. I couldn't record myself. So obviously people couldn't, they couldn't work with me remotely. What happened was I was pitching these songs and I wasn't recording, and I went, instead of going, why doesn't the industry want to pay me for what I'm doing? I stopped and I said, what do I need to do to make myself so valuable that the industry has to pay me for what I'm doing? That's it. Be of service, provide value.
Yes. Nice. I'm always talking about doing service for the community, and not necessarily like going to a soup kitchen, although that's a good thing too. But being of service is so vital. So, one last question before I let you go, and that is, tell us. This is actually normally my first question, by the way. I just flipped it. Tell us something about yourself that not many people would know. Something that's surprising, perhaps.
Something surprising that not many people know. My biological father is Hawaiian and Korean. He's estranged, so I don't have a relationship with him, but my full name is Kristi Leah Keikio Kalani Kamai Bradley.
Oh my goodness, that is such a cool name. Can you just say that one more time?
Which is why I go by Kris. Yeah, sure. It's Kristi Leah Keikio Kalani Kamai Bradley. And Keikio Kalani means child of God.
Beautiful. Right. Thank you so much, Kris. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'm sure everyone's going to get tons out of this, because you've given so many potential avenues for people to explore in this short hour long, well, not even an hour long, short 45-minute long chat. So thank you.
My pleasure.